Next inductee is a builder, Kenny Timmons Sr., and I'd call on committee member Joanne McDonald to do the induction, please.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I just want to say, before I start, I want to add my congratulations, especially to John McClellan. Don't want to point out any age differences, but I was one of those kids that he drove around to those basketball tournaments and that. So, well deserved, I'm sure. Also, this is a night that, it's my favorite night of the year because we get to listen to some incredible stories, and being on the committee is a profound honor for me. We have lots of lively discussions, as you can imagine. In the fall is when we choose the honorees for the following year, so it's a do-or-die fight to try and get in the people that you want and to keep the Mount Carmel people at bay. Anyway, tonight I am truly honored to present to you a most deserving inductee into the Hall of Fame, and that is Kenny Timmons Sr. I just want to acknowledge the help that I got from two people, especially Andy Hines, who is always there to give me information on the Scotchtown River Ryan, especially that affiliation, and also my brother-in-law, Carl Marsh, who is a sports legend, and also he knows everything there is to know about sports in Waterford. So I'm fortunate to have that connection. So to begin, how extremely coincidental is it that we are honoring Kenny Timmons Sr. on this particular date and time? Today would have been his 99th birthday, and I hope he's smiling down on all of us tonight. Kenny was born on July 15th, 1920, in Pleasant Bay, Cape Breton, and then lived for several years in Inverness. He was quite young when his family moved to Scotchtown area, and he lived there until he died on August 5th, 2009, at 89 years of age. It would be difficult to pick up any local newspaper over a 40-plus year span from the early 1950s to the late 1990s that did not contain a picture of some team or other, in some sport or other, without the broad, smiling face of Kenny Timmons Sr. looking back at you. Be it baseball, ice hockey, floor hockey, softball, or broomball, you name it, and Kenny was sure to be a key part of the coaching staff. He was, more often than not, inclined to be a team's assistant coach or manager, but he never shied away from coaching duties if any team needed him to fill that role as well. Kenny was the perfect accessory to any team and was always sought after by many coaches to be part of their coaching staff. Throughout the years, he earned a stellar reputation for being an integral part of any team because he always went out of his way to ensure that things ran smoothly. His assistance in putting on tournaments over the years, no matter what the sport, was indeed legendary. His willingness to put in the time, as well as in his attention to the smallest details, made him just the best person to be associated with any team or tournament. Although Kenny didn't play any sports himself, he earned a huge reputation as a builder of many sports in this area. Back in the early 1950s, he coached the St. Agnes boys juvenile basketball team with Father Dulhanty. He also helped coach many St. Agnes boys hockey teams in the Cape Breton Intermediate League in the 1960s and 70s. Throughout the 1970s, Kenny worked alongside Bill Crombie Williamson with the highly successful Scotchtown Tenpennies and Raiders fastball teams, who dominated the provincial and maritime stage over a 10-year period. This amazing 1-2 coaching punch has resulted in both men now being inducted into this Hall of Fame, and both are extremely deserving of that honor. Kenny worked in the coal mines, but when he wasn't working, he could be found at one or more of the local fields. He and his wife, Celeste, also found time to raise 6 wonderful children in those years as well. Kenny Jr., Bernie, or Bunny, Barbara, Nick, Heather, and Robin. I can tell you that they've told me that he was the most wonderful and loving father, and I believe them, but I honestly don't know when they ever saw him. He had to be the busiest husband, father, and coach on the planet. None of the fields in the area were ever sodded with grass back in the early days, and Kenny often brought his own rakes and shovels to clean off the fields. He was acutely aware that any large rocks could cause a ball to take a wonky bounce and thus change the outcome of the game. According to Karl Marsh, Kenny was Mr. Everything as far as coordinating teams, schedules, and fields in the area. Kenny could always be seen lining off the fields for any of the teams he was associated with. His main equipment for many years was an old bent rusty can that he filled with lime, and then he walked the entire infield to line it off. He also had a special board that was cut to the exact dimensions of the batter's box, and he used this board and rusty can for many years to get the fields ready for a game. Just imagine how straight his eye would have to be and how he could never waver while walking along those baselines. Kenny also coached Little League softball in Scotchtown for years, along with his brother-in-law, half-brother Freddie Blower. They started up the league themselves, as well as coaching the teams and coordinating the schedules. These young softball players became an important feeder system for many of the great teams that came out of Scotchtown and River Ryan in later years. Kenny was also very much involved in coaching baseball with Bull Marsh. This involved all levels, including junior, intermediate, and senior baseball. He was Bull's assistant coach on the 1962 New Waterford Comets when they won the Maritime Softball Championship. His quiet, cheerful demeanor was a stark contrast to the loud and frenetic coaching style of Bull Marsh, but together they made an awesome team. Bull often said that he would never have been able to take a lot of those teams as far as he did without Kenny's assistance. They also both worked with Bernie McKinnon on the 1959 and 1965 New Waterford Giants baseball teams, both of whom claimed provincial and maritime baseball championships. Kenny also worked on those teams for all the years in between those championships. They were exciting times, and he dearly loved to be part of it. Over his long career, he coached innumerable baseball, softball, and fastball teams, and was a valued member of each and every team. In addition to his baseball legacy, Kenny also coached hockey with the Scotchtown Royals, and in later years he coached in the Gentlemen's Hockey League in town. He also put in many hours coaching on the floor hockey team at Mount Carmel Gym, and he even coached for a year in a broomball league in New Waterford. It only lasted 1 year, but that was certainly not any reflection on Kenny, who gave 100% of his time and effort. Somehow, Kenny also found the time to give back to his communities in other ways. He was a volunteer fireman in Scotchtown for a number of years, as well as helping to coordinate many benefit concerts in this area to help people in need. Kenny was also nominated and honored as a community volunteer by the late Recreation Director Gary McDonald. His daughter Heather describes her father as being perpetually young at heart. She also said that he and his son Kenny Jr. were involved in sports, and there was always a friendly competition between them when it came to winning awards. She's guessing her father is pretty happy tonight to have bested Kenny Jr. once again. Kenny Sr. always showed his family love, compassion, dedication, strength, and kindness, which were the same qualities he brought to his coaching as well. Kenny Timmons Sr. and Jr. will be part of a book on sports history of this area, written by David Whitman, which is due to be published in the fall of this year. An excerpt from the book states that Ken Timmons Sr. was inducted into the New Waterford Sports Hall of Fame in 2016 as a member of the Scotchtown Raiders, and again in 2019 as a builder. Over the years, he also coached the New Waterford Comets, Scotchtown Specials, Lingan Miners, and the New Waterford Hawks. Kenny Timmons Sr. stopped coaching in 2000. He was 80 years old at that time. He literally made it his life's mission to be of service to others. In the words of the great coach, John Wooden, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. Kenny Timmons Sr. was a master at preparations, and he understood that all the small jobs leading up to a game had to be well done in order for individuals and teams to prosper. He knew instinctively that these preparations help lead to championships, and he certainly deserves a great deal of respect and credit for all he's done and all he gave to all of us. It is my great pleasure to tell you his story tonight, and a great honor for me to induct Kenny Timmons Sr. into the New Waterford and District Sports Heritage Hall of Fame for 2019. I ask all of his children who are present to come up and accept this plaque on his behalf, and I believe that's Heather and Nick and Lindsay and Chris. Okay, yeah.
Picture right this way, guys. Somebody want to say it? Sure.
I'm Chris Gallant, the grandson of Kenny Timmons. It's hard to know what he'd say if he was here today. He was a humble man. He never looked for recognition for the work he did. But he was also a proud man. He took great pride, first and foremost, in his family. But sports were a close second. I think he would have thanked you for this honor, thanked all the players and coaches he had the opportunity to work with, and he would have thanked my grandmother and his children for allowing him to volunteer so much of his time. And he probably would have invited all of you to join him in a cold beer after this was done to celebrate. So on his behalf, on behalf of the family, thank you so much.
Good job, Chris. Thank you, folks.